Hello everyone, I'm Taaka Awori, founder and CEO of Busara Africa, a Pan-African leadership development firm. Welcome to the Leadership in Africa Redefined podcast. This podcast seeks to do two things. One, change the narrative of leadership in Africa, and two, provide concrete strategies and tips for leading in an African context. We do this by interviewing amazing African leaders so that the narrative of leadership in Africa is defined by the best of us, not the worst of us. We share their stories and provide practical suggestions for dealing with the challenges of leading on this continent. We discuss, interrogate, and examine concrete leadership practices that work. We also look at failures that these leaders faced and how they navigated their ways back on track. It's an exciting and empowering space for leaders to thrive and engage. Subscribe to the show to become the leader you have always wanted to be. And if you like the show, be sure you rate it and review it. It helps others to find it. Thanks so much. Welcome to another episode of Leadership in Africa Redefined, the podcast. One of our nuts and bolts sessions where we bring you practical advice to strengthen your leadership practice. So, dear listeners, today is a very special session because we have a new partner in crime. I have a new partner in crime with me today. Usually you see me here with Robert. Today I have Dr. Gillian Hammah. Gillian, yes, you're welcome.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
So Dr. G, as I'm going to be calling her, Gillian, Dr. G is an associate of Busara and the founder and CEO of Fairbanks Consulting. But yes. I think why Gillian is such a wonderful addition to our nuts and bolts session is she also recently got her PhD in leadership. Mm-hmm. So she's had lots of leadership roles and positions. So what Dr. G brings to this space is both almost that conceptual, theoretical knowledge of leadership, but also practical experiences. So Gillian, thank you for joining the squad.
Thank you, Taaka. Thank you. And thank you to all the viewers out there who are watching. So nice to be a part of this conversation.
Fantastic.
So looking forward to it.
Yes. So today we are talking about leaders who do too much. And those of you who are either watching or listening, I hope you will see this to a follow-up to the nuts and bolts episode that I did with Robert on the rested leader. And if you haven't watched that, please roll back. Don't miss that particular episode. But in many respects, this episode goes deeper. One of the reasons we were talking about, Gillian, with Robert on that session about why so many leaders are exhausted is essentially they're doing too much. So hopefully this nuts and bolts gives you some practical understanding of, are you one of those who's doing too much? And if so, what can you do about it? But maybe let's start with unpacking the problem.
Okay.
Gillian, when you think about particularly our African context, both you and I practice leadership and support leaders in an African context. Why do you think leaders are doing too much?
So let me start by confessing my sin before I start.
Yes.
Which is, I am one of those leaders who
me too.
Does too much, and I'm still working on how to manage that. So let me start by saying nobody is perfect. I don't think anyone has achieved the ultimate yet. But what we are here to talk about at least is how can we make one step in the right direction. And if we keep making small steps, then it's good. So I will start with maybe touching on a few issues that cause leaders to do too much. And the first one that I would touch on is resource constraints and infrastructure issues. And what that means is, in an African context, we tend to have very limited resources. Most of the companies that exist are in Ghana. If you pick Ghana, and many of the African countries are small and medium sized, which means that they're already stretched, they're under-resourced, the staff they have skill gaps. So you find that because of that, the leaders then either are doing so much by micromanaging everybody, or they're overworking to compensate for the gap. So that's one big challenge. Another challenge is social expectations. Now, and social expectations is not just the expectations from friends or family. From in the work world. You have family expectations, you have friend expectations. And because, again, in the African setting, it's very communal. It's less individualistic like you would find in North America or Europe. You tend to find people are stretched very thin, trying to meet work demands, trying to meet family, funeral demands, wedding demands, engagement, baby dedication. Like, there are so many demands pulling the leader personally. And then even within that, when you are leading a team, your team members are getting married. So I think of my team members this year alone. We have had at least 6 or 7 weddings.
Wow.
We have had a couple funerals, and it's not just funerals of individuals, their mother, their father, their auntie, their uncle, but you are still expected, if you are a leader, to show up and be present. And so that really stretches the leader very thin. And maybe the third thing that I would just touch on quickly is this new expectation, much more so post-COVID, of always being switched on. Before COVID, you would have the situation where, yes, technology has advanced, we have our phones, we have everything, we're connected. After COVID, or during COVID, what we realized was that, hey, you're online, you can be working all the time. And so this new expectation crept in where you are now expected to work all the time, because you have all of your resources at home. You can no longer use the excuse, oh, my laptop is at the office or something. So you are stuck being on call 24/7, and the expectation is there, so much so that if you don't, you are seen to be either depriving or not performing. So those are some of the key challenges I would touch on.
Love that. And I wanna plus one you on a couple of things. One, to say I'm fully with you in terms of I am probably one of those leaders who's doing too much. So I'm also work in progress. So this episode is just as much for me. But also on this last point, because I think you made 3 points, it's the resource constraints. And I know constantly I'm working with leaders who are saying, I'm supposed to achieve so much. I'm competing globally with people around the world, and yet I am limited in terms of availability, the social expectations. But I want to underline this point you raised on the mobile technology. The other day I was giving a talk and I said to folks, I said, how many of you in this room have your email on your phone? And thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was 100%. So just as you said, so it means that we're constantly on. We're not able to turn off. I would like to add 2 more. I think 2 more reasons, and I think they're almost tied to some of the things that you're saying. The cultural emphasis on communal responsibility on this continent. And folks, by the way, when we keep saying Africa, we fully recognize the diversity and specificity and differences within this continent. We don't mean to make it a blanket thing, but I think we know some of the common things. And one of those common things is this: for many leaders, there is a pressure to also play leadership roles in other spaces. So not only are you attending the wedding, most likely you're also the deacon in your church. Most likely you're also some type of leader within your hometown. Most likely if there is a funeral, they say, oh, Gillian, why don't you be the one in charge of managing the money on that? And there's an understanding that you will play that role. So I think that also makes it hard for people. I would say another thing is setting boundaries can be quite hard culturally. And I've seen this often in workplaces where somebody is not pulling their weight. You want to hold them accountable. You're struggling to hold them accountable. Maybe, again, they've been calling you Auntie Taaka, Mommy, all of that. And you're like, this is not a fit. So instead of managing those boundaries and holding them to account, what you do is then almost take up their work. You do extra because you're unable to actually do that. Or you're struggling to delegate, so you don't. So I see many leaders dealing with that. And then maybe I'll end with one additional challenge, is this pressure to achieve success at all costs. It's almost like there's this pressure to go, 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 go. And so many of the leaders I've worked with are doing so much because they've put this pressure on themselves, particularly related as well to what you said, Gillian, earlier about these tough economic times and what it means to succeed in these tough economic times. Yeah. So we can clearly see there's a whole range and a very understandable reason why leaders are doing too much. Huh? But I think you haven't come to hear us talk about problems, right? You have come for these are the nuts and bolts sessions. It's so what can you do about it? If you are like Gillian and I, you recognize you're one of those leaders who's doing too much. So let's talk about some strategies to manage what we're calling overdoing. Gillian, any strategies for that?
Yes. Before I start the strategies, though, I think the way I would frame everything that we'll touch on and I'll share is, I would say if you take nothing else away, 3 words. And the 3 words that matter most for me in this context is give yourself permission. Everything ladders up to that. Because my first point is about, the first strategy is about redefining success and productivity. But you cannot redefine success if you don't really give yourself permission to follow that definition. So step 1, if you want to really manage your time, is what does success mean to you? Not what does social media level success mean. What does success really mean to you? It's for me, if I take myself personally, success, I want to be successful. I'm very, very driven, super driven. But success for me is about being able to do really good work.
Yes.
And have the clients that I have appreciate and say, well done. For me, that's success.
Yes.
Success is not how many cars I drive or how many houses I can buy. It's different for everyone, and it's okay. But what is your success? Do not replace somebody else's definition of success with yours. So figure that out. Figure it out for yourself and your family. Not because most of us were in family settings as well. So you can't just think of yourself in that context. So figure it out. And then when you decide, give yourself permission to live that success that you have defined for yourself. Don't let somebody else put pressure on you to say, why are you driving? There was a friend of mine who had a car, CEO, but his license plate, in Ghana, it's the number plate, 14, 15, so you know what year it is. CEO, they're saying to him, why is your plate a 14 plate? We were in 2020 at the time. And people were looking at it as, how can you be this level and you're driving a car that's 6 years old, 7 years old? And people were really putting pressure. And I have team members who also are under the same pressure to be driving vehicles with a certain level or a certain plate number or a certain kind of vehicle. And be okay with not having everything. You can work towards it, but it's in stages as well. So give yourself permission to live by your definition of success. Then give yourself permission and time to achieve it. It's not overnight.
Yeah.
And that's why I think sometimes we get trapped in doing too much, because we want to get it done so quickly and we feel like if we can't do it in 6 months or a year, we haven't achieved.
Yes. Sorry, and I just have to say, this is such an important one for the young folks. Huh? I find the young ones are in such a hurry. How do I tell the young folks? Slow down. It is okay if you're not always eating out in Laboni or in those wonderful places of Lavington every single night. And I love that. What did you say? Give yourself permission to define your own version of success. So sorry.
Absolutely. No, because it's, we're sitting here, Taaka, and we're having this conversation. Someone doesn't know, we are in 2024. I graduated university with my first degree in 1996. So I didn't get here overnight.
Yes.
I have been at this thing for almost 30 years. I'm young. Yes, I look young. But
yes, you do look young.
This is almost 3 decades of working. And so that thing of give yourself time. if you give yourself time, then you won't kill yourself overdoing it, as we say. So that's number one. Number two is prioritize, I would say, ruthlessly. There's a certain matrix, it's called Eisenhower matrix, and really the essence of it is there are certain things that are important, there are certain things that are urgent. There are some things that are neither. And you need to be able to figure out which ones are urgent but not important. Well, yeah, there are some things that may be urgent but borderline not important. There are some things that are urgent and very important. Do those first. There are some things that are important but not urgent that you can delay. So sometimes we feel like there are so many people waiting on us for things that we have to get everything done immediately. But no, not everything is urgent. So again, give yourself permission to do the urgent ones first. Then you take your time and you do the others, and be able to explain to whoever is waiting that, yes, I'll get it done, but give me time. The problem is, in many cases, Taaka, and I don't know if you've seen this, people don't communicate. So we have a habit of saying yes to everything, and then we know we can't deliver. We try valiantly, but we know we can't deliver, and then we disappoint people because we never come back to tell them, you know what, give me a little bit of time for this. So it's that thing of prioritize, but give yourself permission to prioritize, and let those people around you know that you'll get to it, but maybe not everything immediately. So those would be my first two.
Your first two. Hi folks, hope you're enjoying the show. So have you heard about the Africa Leaders Circle? Our impactful e-learning platform that enables you to grow into the leader you would want to follow? Here is a message to tell you what you need to know.
Are you a CEO, executive director, or HR manager that is looking to build a pipeline of leaders that are ready to step up into management roles? Are you looking for a self-paced learning platform that provides your leaders with quality content and does not take them away from their work for too long? Are you looking for a program that enables your managers to move from knowledge acquisition to demonstrable improved practice? Then look no further. Sign them up for the African Leaders Circle today. The African Leaders Circle is an e-learning platform that gives your managers access to an exclusive community of leaders across the continent and a wide range of strategies and tools to stand out. We do this through online courses, discussion forums, a library of resources, and a personal learning advisor to support each of your managers to maximize their learning on the platform. To learn more, visit our website www.busara-africa.com.
Don't forget to visit our website busara-africa.com to learn more. And now back to the show. Let me come in with two more.
Okay.
And some of them build in some respect to your last point about prioritizing. Because my third one is about cultural adaptation of time management. So it's about time management, but it's recognizing that even as we do time management, we're doing it in a cultural context, recognizing that there are certain expectations. So this is the one that helps you deal with the challenge of all the communal expectations, all the family responsibilities. Now, of all the time management hacks I have used, the one I am finding most useful is time blocking. So folks, if you haven't heard me talk about time blocking, this is my chance to go wax lyrical about time blocking. So what do I mean by time blocking? What I was finding, actually, if I go back to your Eisenhower matrix, is that I was finding that there were very many urgent things that were getting my attention, but they were important but not urgent things that were not getting my attention. Let me give you a concrete example.
Okay.
So a lot of the work that we do to build Busara, like doing the podcast, so making sure that our website is up to date, making sure that we're meeting as a team to plan. Some of that is not urgent. It might not be as urgent as when a client calls me and says, Taaka, I need coaching, or we need a retreat next week. That's urgent. I step to the ball when a client calls me. When it's Busara stuff, it is super important, but it might not get the same level of urgency. Same thing with my own personal development, in terms of making sure that my knowledge about leadership is up to scratch. What am I listening to? What am I reading? That to me is very important, but it might not be super urgent. And I started to notice a pattern, Gillian, that over time, like at the end of the quarter, I would notice that all of those urgent things would get done, but the important things weren't done until I discovered time blocking. So with the time blocking is what I would do is write a list of all those super important things, important to me, to my growth, and I would block them in my calendar. Literally, I work with my colleague Priscilla, who helps me with scheduling, and I would say, Monday afternoon, just block that time aside. I'm going to do this internal work, this self-development work. So time blocking becomes a way that, because normally what happens is if your schedule is free, somebody will block a meeting there. So, and particularly for many leaders who there's so much demand. So it's a way of prioritizing, back to your prioritize. It's a way of prioritizing what's important to you to achieve your goal. So I would say that would be another strategy. As a leader, determine what's important, time block that.
And, just to add one thing to your time blocking, it's important, as Taaka said, to get it done. But for some of us, we may need to get to it in stages.
Okay.
So with the time blocking, there's a technique. It's called the Pomodoro technique.
Okay.
And essentially what it says with time blocking is that not everybody can manage to block big chunks of time, like 1 hour or 2 hours at a time. So you start slowly. Start with 25 minutes, block it, then take a break. Then block another 25 minutes, take a break, until you can increase the time to now where you're doing like blocking 1 hour, 2 hours, and you know how to manage that time. So I just thought I would add
I like that. And by the way, I think it ties into your first thing about when you define, remember your first point was about defining success. So if you decide that your definition of success is not about the bling bling, keeping up with the Joneses or the Asantes or whoever who, but your definition of success is quality relationships with family, if your definition of success is giving back in a particular way, then you time block those activities. So time blocking is not just for your professional work. You can also time block things in your personal life if that includes your definition of success. But okay, so we've got our...
And might I just add?
Yes.
To some of the young men out there who are considering young ladies to marry and moving towards marriage. You can also time block for your girlfriend and your wife. I'm just saying.
I love it.
Like, please, hear me. So, time block the dates. Time block all of those things. Please, don't be selfish, okay? Time block. Because, let me just say really quickly, men, they have, a lot of them, they have their boys from school. They have no issues time blocking for the guys. I am advocating.
We're going to watch Arsenal.
Please time block for the special people in your life as well. That's a free one, so that's extra. So now coming back to this, maybe a couple more strategies.
Yes. I have one last one on this. I would say now coming back to the workplace.
Okay.
Another strategy. We've given you 3 strategies so far. The fourth, I would say, is develop a strong second in command. Or at least develop a strong leadership team around you. I think for many of us leaders who are doing too much, we're essentially doing too much because there's nobody around us who can pick up a lot of what we're doing. So this thing about gradually delegating important tasks so people can do things when you're not around. As you delegate, you're publicly acknowledging their authority. So not everybody always has to say, oh, Taaka. Everybody knows that, oh, Robert is there, Lydia is there. It's not always about Taaka. I think that can be very powerful in enabling leaders to free up their time because there are others who can take this up.
So the interesting thing, though, about what you've said is before you even get to that point where you delegate, again, there are some leaders who suffer from insecurity.
Yeah.
So they're not even willing to delegate or groom a second in command because they feel that if I bring somebody up who maybe knows as much as me or can do the job that I can do, then I'll lose my job.
Yes.
And I have literally had people who I mentor say that thing. There was one conversation I was having with someone, and she was given the opportunity to bring somebody in to help her. She needs the help. But she wanted to now go and find the most junior person out there she could find, because she was afraid that if she brought somebody in too senior, then they would either put the person over her or something.
Yeah.
And I had to say to her, no, when you do that, bring somebody in that's good. It frees up your time.
Yes.
And then it gives you the opportunity to actually focus and show that you can do other things, even more senior things. So it's that thing of the 2IC is so important, Taaka. I love that point. But don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Don't let fear stop you from doing that.
Yes, yes.
The other thing,
yes.
And this, my next point kind of builds on your previous podcast with Robert, where you were talking about rest. And this is about, let me say, I'll use a term that you guys use about digital breaks.
Yes.
Where you need to get into the habit of implementing tech-free time. Again, here, I am preaching to the choir. I need to do it myself. Like, I really need to improve on it, but I'm trying. And it's the whole thing of starting small, but beginning to have even some small space, whether it be 30 minutes a day, that you put your phone down and you do something else.
Yes.
It could be reading, it could be just staring into the sky. You'd be
Chatting
amazed.
with family,
whatever.
playing with the dog.
Yes. There's so many things, but as long as you have the phone in your hand and you carry, because, we are so switched on that you wake up, the first thing you do is you pick up your phone. You check WhatsApp to see if anybody sent you a message, anybody called you. Even sometimes in the night while we're sleeping.
Yes.
When you wake up to use the washroom, you come back, check your phone. So you go to the washroom, the phone is there with you. Like, we're so switched on all the time that let's try and see if we can give ourselves small breaks and then in time increase it. That's one. And then coming back to the point, I think it was your third point about
the second in command, the leadership team.
No, not the one before that, about, and you were talking about urgent and important and not getting things done.
Yes.
Where you are doing so many urgent things that you sacrifice the important things.
Yes.
That leads me to my next point, which is about creating a personal board of advisors. There is nothing like having accountability partners. It's one of my really big things where you need one person or two or three if you can get, but at least one person who will be honest with you, who will call you on it and say, Taaka, you know what? I've been watching you and you've been going. You need to stop. And if you don't stop, you're going to do yourself harm. You need that person in your life. And it could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be a spouse, but you need somebody who cares about you so much that they're willing to tell you stop. Just stop and take a break, refresh, and then continue.
You do that for me.
Yes.
You'll be like, Taaka, you've been traveling a lot, right? You've been on the road a lot. Yes.
So that one is really, really important. And then my next one that I think I've just done two. So let me not eat up the whole thing.
You said is implement tech-free time and create a personal board of advisors, at least that one person would hold you accountable.
Yes.
So let me give two more and maybe the two final ones, and then I'll summarize. I think and this is actually the seventh one, is to prioritize health as a leadership strategy. Right? Too often, health is just something for our personal life. Recognizing that the quality of your results, the quality of your leadership is highly dependent on your health. And I was coaching last week and somebody said, what is something I wished I knew in my 30s that I now know? And I said that health matters. Not and health and what I've noticed is many of us start paying attention to our health in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and I kept saying I wish I had started to develop those habits much earlier on, so that they would become habits. Now is when you see us now hustling to make sure that we're walking every day, hustling to make sure that we're drinking our water regularly. But if I'd learned that much earlier in my 20s and 30s, then I would have seen. So I think for me, it's really about framing. First of all, for health to be seen as a leadership strategy, it means I have to frame self-care as essential for leadership. And again, special message to all of you women leaders out there who spend all their time taking care of everybody else. This is a message to you. Self-care is not selfish. Self-care is actually, as Robert and I talked about on the session on the rested leader, self-care is really ensuring that you're sufficiently replenished so you can give the best of your leadership. And so therefore it's about doing things like scheduling exercise, scheduling your downtime, scheduling your annual health checkups as literally non-negotiable appointments. I know for many of us, certain meetings with our clients we would never miss. It should get to a level where our meeting on the tennis court, as you do, is something that you would never miss. So that's, I would say, the next one. Prioritize health as a leadership strategy. And maybe then the last one would be connected to something you were talking about in terms of being always on our phones, always reachable, is about establishing clear communication protocols. It's really about setting expectations and different boundaries for different types of communication. So within your team, for instance, it's saying that, can I be reached on WhatsApp even at 10 o'clock at night? You think that is okay? Or are you supposed to be sending me emails at all hours? I have worked particularly with global teams where somebody might be sitting in New York and somebody may be sitting in India, and they're very thoughtful, particularly those ones who are working outside of the established time zones of others, to say that if I send an email, so let's say it's Taaka, if I send an email at Ghana time, 8 a.m., and I'm working with somebody in India, or let me say, if I send it at 5, and I know somebody in Nairobi, it's already 8 p.m. I noticed that particular person, she would write, please feel no pressure to respond to this until you start work. She would always add that and that was a communication protocol, so it was understood. It's still her working hour, but she was thoughtful about recognizing for somebody else, they will probably see it, but because you're the boss, you probably want to react to it, but it's really setting that expectation that you don't have to respond to it.
And not only for global partners, but sometimes too, as a leader, we need to do that for our team members. Because if you send a message to a team member at 10 or 11, I was famous for sending messages at 4 a.m. in the morning, because I would get up and I would start work early and I would start sending off the messages, and people knew it was coming. So they would be positioned to also say, okay, yes, you know what, they start responding. And it took me a while to realize that, Gillian, that is not good. It's not good. I didn't realize overnight. But for your team, give them permission as well not to respond immediately and to respond the next day when work begins. I think it's really, really, really important.
But the flip is also, sometimes we're doing too much because people are not responding. So it's both saying that I'm sending this to you now, feel no pressure, it's 4 a.m., feel no pressure to respond, but it's also being able to say, I need a response back by the end of the day. Because sometimes, because we're not getting the feedback, many times people are like, I send emails, people don't respond. So before you know it, I'm picking up all this slack.
But you know what, the interesting thing about that is, and I have found it with many of my own team members, culturally, somebody younger than you or somebody more junior than you, they are very reluctant to give you a time to respond.
Oh, yes.
So because they feel like now they're telling you what to do. And so I used to struggle with that thing where I say to my team members, if you need me to get back to you by 5 p.m., tell me. If not, I'll do my own thing and I'll get back to you when
Yes.
it's convenient to
Yes.
me. So it's also giving them permission again to tell you when they
Yes.
need something,
From
tell you
you.
when
Yes.
it's due.
Yes.
Then the last thing that I wanted to touch on with the communication that I think generally on the continent we need to do a better job of
Yes.
is with leave. So I have friends, I used to work in Canada, and even with some of the international clients that we have, when they go on leave and there is something due, they will tell you, I am on leave for the next 2 weeks, so I will not respond until I return.
Yes.
In this setting, nobody would dare do that. Like, people wouldn't even think of telling their boss, I'm sorry, I'm on leave. I won't respond.
Yeah.
They don't do it.
We'll break it. Yeah.
They don't do it, and there's not that permission in most companies to
Fully go on
fully
leave.
go. So
Yeah.
people don't go on leave. They're just constantly working. And as a leader, you too, you're constantly working. You're
Yeah.
afraid to say, I'm on leave, so sorry.
Unreachable.
That word doesn't exist for us. So communication protocols is key.
Yes.
But
yes.
it all sits on permission. I think
Back
that
to
is
your whole
so
point around giving yourself
Yes.
permission. Huh?
Now let's add others. Give others permission.
Yes, to also
yeah.
be able to rest and
Yeah,
replenish.
yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So, folks, let me summarize. We've given you lots of strategies. Let me summarize the key strategies we gave you. So, but first, remember, it's all under that theme, as Gillian said, of giving yourself permission. So, the first one is redefine success and productivity. So, redefine for yourself. Number 2, prioritize ruthlessly. Number 3, practice time management in our cultural context, but decide which is your time management hack you're following. We talked about time blocking. You choose yours, but manage your time. Number 4, develop a strong second in command and leadership team around you, so it's not all about you. Number 5, digital breaks. Implement tech-free time. 6, create a personal board of advisors, the 1 or 2 people who tell you, Charlie, you are doing too much, enough, it's enough, slow it down, nisawa. Number 7, prioritize health as a leadership strategy. Remember, self-care is not about selfishness, it's about replenishment. And the final one, establish clear communication protocols. Yeah, so I hope you captured all the 8. Gillian, as we close, what are some key takeaways you want our audience to leave with?
Okay, let me touch on a few things. One, I would say sustainable leadership. If you want to be a leader and you want to sustain your role as a leader, it is a strategic choice. It doesn't happen automatically. It is a choice that you will have to make and you will have to work at. So that's 1. Number 2, I would say effective leadership comes from, again, it's all strategic, and we'll keep using the word strategy, but if you want to be effective, it comes from strategically focusing and looking at how you can create value over the long term rather than just being busy. Because I can tell you that a burnt out leader cannot lead. So I think those would probably be my 2 main takeaways, that it's a choice. Doing or avoiding overdoing is a choice that you have to make. And busyness is not necessarily even effectiveness.
Yes.
There are many people who are so busy, but when you look at what they actually do.
Yes.
So, I think those would be my 2 things. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I would say I would again plus 1 on what you're saying. I think my key takeaway that I want our audience to also, in addition to yours, is self-care is not about selfishness. Self-care and balance is not about weakness. And I love what you said, a burnt out leader cannot lead. Lead from the best of you. And the best of you is not when you're doing too much. So, thank you, Dr. G, for joining me on this episode.
I love this topic.
Folks, I hope you enjoyed the session. As you know, I always end with 3 requests. please subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Number 2, if you enjoyed it, share. Don't be selfish. Share with someone. If you know a leader who's doing too much, please share the episode. And third, we would love to get your feedback. Rate, review. Let us know what is one thing you're going to do differently to ensure that you are not one of those leaders who's doing too much. But thank you for joining us. See you next time.
Bye.
Ciao. Bye. Hello, wonderful leader. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the podcast. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too. If you want more of the lessons, experiences, and nuggets for effective leadership, join our amazing platform for leaders, the African Leaders Circle. Learn more at www.busara-africa.com. And if you like the show, don't forget to subscribe and share with other amazing leaders. See you soon. Ciao.